Hello, good afternoon. The last session of the first day. Okay, if you can please take your seats. Okay, I'm Ashok Kotwal. I'm the chair of this session. But before we begin the session, which is officially in the program, I just want to take just a few minutes to acquaint you with Ideas for India, an information portal that we run. I would like to see a show of hands. How many of you are already acquainted with Ideas for India? Okay. But the rest of you who haven't seen it, it's sort of an online journal or an information portal which is sponsored by IGC and run out of the Delhi central office. Nandini Gulati here is the managing editor, and she really runs the show. But what you see there is the website. What we've been doing for the last 3 years is basically posting about 2 to 3 articles a week. And these days we are putting 3 articles a week. And these articles are mostly research findings presented in a way which is very accessible to non-specialists. And they are typically on the important developmental issues in India, right? So there are lots of people who are working on the Indian development problems, and almost no matter what sort of sector or what kind of issue you're interested in, you'll find some. Our editorial board yeah, some of these people are present here, like Maitrish Ghatak, Parikshit Ghosh. And we have, so far we have had about 400 contributors from all over the world working on India. There are about between 11,000 to 12,000 regular visitors per month. And I think you might find this something or other of interest to you. So I wanted you to see this not just as potential readers of this, but potential contributors. Okay, so that's about it. And it is the simple, in Google, if you put Ideas for India, it will take you to the website. Okay? All right. So it's, right now it's my privilege to introduce Madhav Chavan to you. Madhav is the most creative social innovator I have met. He's had a remarkable journey. He got his PhD from Ohio State in chemistry. He taught in the States for a while. Then he returned to India and he was teaching chemistry at the University Department of Chemical Technology, UDCT, for a while. And then he got somehow involved in the National Literacy Commission and got really intrigued by the problem of educating children, like how the pedagogical problem. And so this was sort of mid-90s. What was the year he started Pratham? 94, 95, he started Pratham. You've already seen some references to it. It's one of the most cited and sought after educational foundation, which has done wonders in terms of pedagogy in rural schools. Then in 2007, they started another division, which is ASR, Annual Survey of Education Report, which has been publishing annual reports for last 8 years. on the quality of learning. And in fact, this has, as you know, really shaken up many state governments because some of the findings were quite shocking. He has won a number of awards. I mean, I don't want to go because many of you, but above all, I would like to mention the Wise Prize for Education, which is very, it's one of the leading prizes in the world. I mean, this is not just an Indian prize. Now, for the last few years, 4-5 years, he has switched his interest from just the primary education in rural areas to skilling of India's labor force. And as you know, there are so many new programs and schemes being announced, like Make in India, and will skill 400 million Indians and so on. But how to do it, whether we'll be able to do it, these are all the questions we don't know answers to. And so here is Madhav to tell us about what he has found so far.
This is absolutely the graveyard shift, and so I'll try to keep it short. I know you've given me 40 minutes, but I don't know whether I have things to talk about. If I wear my glasses, I'll know whether people are interested in what I'm saying or not. I'm not an economist, so I've been struggling all day to understand what is being said. What I have to say today is not in so many slides. There's probably one or two that I will show you, and largely depend on my experience, my organization's experience for the last 4 or 5 years in actually doing things on the ground. And there are some questions in my mind which I'm going to toss at you. Hopefully some of you will want to do a little more research and try to understand what the problems are. Now, there are some 4 bullet points on the screen. I wanted them as placeholders for my own thoughts so that I don't digress too much and go all over the place wandering around. But big question I have in mind, which may seem not really all that important, it depends upon how you look at it, is really who wants skills. Everybody seems to be talking about, at the policy level and so on, about a skilled India and skilling India and workforce and this, that and the other. But I'm asking this question in my own mind every day. Who really does want skills? Do people want skills? And I ask this question in many meetings, government meetings, corporate meetings. By corporate meetings, I mean literally leaders of industry and business have asked them whether you really want skilled workers, or are you just saying it? There are 2 bullet points on the lower side. I'm asking this question: will economic growth stall for lack of skills? And Ashok immediately shot back, no. So you know that if there is no money, economic growth will stall if there is no investment. But will lack of skills stall economic growth? What is the answer? If it's not going to stall the economic growth, then those who are interested in the economic growth, will they really be committed to skills? Is a question that is in my mind. If, on the other hand, if there is a skilled population, will that spur economic growth? Will we have faster and whatever more robust economic growth? That is the other question to be asked. And I don't find answers to these 2 questions very often in the literature. There is a lot of rhetoric about why people have to be skilled, and if you don't have a skilled workforce, this will happen. There's no real argument saying that if we don't have if we don't have skilled population, we will have a problem. Nobody seems to say that. I think underlying somewhere it is being said that every year a large population of young people is going to start entering the workforce. It already is entering the workforce. And if it doesn't get jobs, then we have a problem. And if you have skills, then you are going to get jobs, which is an argument that has to be inspected. If I have skills, will I get a job? If as an individual, maybe yes, but if there are millions of people who are skilled, will they literally get jobs that they desire? Or will you just give them a job? And there are no answers to be found. When you go down to the actual practice of so-called skilling, you start encountering many of these problems. Now, the first bullet point is there's this KPMG 2012 report. They've done a good job. Like most reports prepared by consultants or governments, it usually takes about 75% of the space, saying what are the good things, what are the problems, and how many people have to be skilled, and so on and so forth. And you know that this is blah, 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 blah kind, and then you come to the last 25% of the pages where they start enumerating the challenges. And if you see the challenges, the report actually gives you the real challenges. You'll be surprised. One challenge that they list, the very first challenge they list, is mobilizing youth for vocational training. Apparently, and actually true, in a country of unemployed people, less skilled people, if you go out and tell a bunch of people that, look, I'm going to give you vocational skills that will lead you to getting jobs, you would think everybody will flock and say, skill me please, and that doesn't happen. Question is why? And then how can you solve that? A second point that they mention is there is not enough industry and employer buy-in into the vocational skilling programs. If that is the case, why are we saying industry wants skilled people? And you don't know the answer to that. And then there are other issues. Then they will talk about labor laws, this, that, and the other. I think, but the first two, to me, are the key issues. If, as they say, Miya Bibi Razi to kya karega Kazi? Lekin agar Miya aur Bibi Razi ne to Kazi karke kya karega? So if young people are not showing that great an interest in getting skilled for vocations, and if the employers and the business is not really jumping up and down about skilling, then what are we talking about? So what is all this going on? Now these are real questions according to me. Nobody in this country will tell you, everybody will say. Now you saw the proclamations that the government, the new government, is going to skill 400 million people, which is not a joke, by 2022. The McKinsey report that came just after the, about 2005 or 2004, talked about 500 million people to be trained over 2 decades. And then I suppose we have skilled 100 million, and so now it's 400 million. That's not true. The schemes that were started over the last 10 years, and I don't think there was a lack of thinking and paperwork and money being allocated and all that. But somehow the vocational skilling program has not gone to scale the way it should have. There were various models being talked about. IITs were run down, ITIs were run down saying these are outdated, they are not useful, they are not producing the kind of skilled workers that we want, and that maybe the private partners will actually show the way and how it can be done. They were talking about for-profit businesses for vocational skilling, and nobody who actually got loans from NSDC to start a so-called for-profit business has come back and said, I'm making a profit. Everybody's lost money. So I don't think anybody can say, and people are talking about having trained 500,000 people, 1 million people, and so on and so forth, or at least 100,000 a year and so on. But nobody is saying that I have a sustainable model. Where people are being trained is like somebody was pointing out in the retail sector, where you have to train people for 10 days and then put them in a shopper's stop or some other mall, and they're working there. But is this serious skilling, or what are we talking about? Industrial, you've given me that subject, I think Ashok picked it, industrial workforce. The word industrial workforce brings out the vision of hordes, thousands of people going into factories and working. That's probably not going to be true for India. All of you know 93% of India is in the unorganized sector, half of it in agriculture, the other half in small businesses and small units, factories, workshops, and so on, and only 7% in the organized sector, and within that, I think, only 25% or 30% in the manufacturing sector. If these are the numbers, and then what kind of workforce are we looking at? What are we going to? I don't have numbers to show you, but let me give you an example. How do we work? We started with the idea, first of all, we said this government recognition and all that is not necessary. I just wanted to be completely free of the fetters of government recognition, government funds, and so on and so forth. I said, let me create a model which will survive, first of all. Can you train people and put them on jobs? That is the first thing. If that you can do that, then everything else is possible. So we said, okay, who's going to, we started way back before the sector skill councils and all that were created by the government of India through the National Skill Development Corporation and so on. We started with a plain idea that, okay, if I want to train people in hospitality, then who is the hospitality business leader? There's a Taj in India. There could be others, but let's say Taj. And if I have a working relationship with Taj as the know-how partner, then at the end of they can give me the know-how, we can train people, and at the end of the training, we'll give them a co-branded certificate, Pratham and Taj, which should have a market value. Whether the government chappa is there or not really does not matter, because the employer is going to see that this is certified by Taj and Pratham, and so I'll hire. And that worked. Then we went on to Larsen & Toubro, L&T, and said, can you do the same for construction? They were happy to do that. We went to Tata Motors, and they were happy to do that. So we came up with a simple formula that if it's a co-branded course certificate between the industry leader and Pratham, and then we give the certificate, then it should have a market value. That assumption holds true. Once we have that, now the question is, so all the industry should be excited about this. If we are creating hospitality workers, then the hospitality industry should say, this is a great thing, we'll all support you. Or we would like to hire more people from you. But in spite of our efforts, there was no industry-wide response saying that this is a great idea. Nobody went out and replicated what we were doing, although we know exactly what to do and how to do. Spending money to skill people, but they're acquiring some skills. We know from our programs, there's a lot of dropping out. Construction workers training, we spend a lot of money, they get trained, they work for 6 months, maybe a year. They say, I'm not going to work in the city, they'll come back. There's a lot of construction work happening in the rural areas also. And they say, I'll start doing my own business and I'll start constructing. People are finding work to do once they acquire skills. Now, if instead of that, if we say now ITIs are outdated, but I'm still going to create a 2-year course for vocational skilling, and I want these young kids to really become polished at international standards. I like the talk. But who has 2 years? Those who are hurting for jobs don't have 2 years. Those who want to earn today, now, and they are negotiating hard. I met a few kids in Ahmednagar. They had all come for training in electrician's course for 3 months. About a third of them told me that they were enrolled in a diploma in engineering college. I said, but if you are enrolled in a college, what are you doing here? And engineering diploma that too. He said, नहीं उधर practical नहीं मिलता है, इधर practical करने को मिलता है, इधर इसलिए आते हैं हम लोग. And I've told my principal that I'm studying here right now. I'll go back and complete my diploma. That's easy. This one, here's where I learn. This is true. I'm not just saying it because it's our program. I think that is true of a lot of people. So these guys will come, get trained and go. And if you say, okay, there's a job waiting for you, you're going to be placed with 6,000 rupees, he says, no, I'm not interested in that. I'll wait till I get an offer for 10,000 or 11,000. Starting positions, nobody's giving you 10,000, 11,000. There is a mismatch of all kinds, and yet, because large numbers of people are trying to find their own way, they're finding their own way. It's not an organized training. Somehow they find what they think is right. Maybe it's like your auctioning process. You know, like I will choose where I want to go. This is a very important distinction I find in the young people today. It's not always about money though. I've met people who will say, I'll take a cut, but I want to learn this and go forward. I think it's more about dignity. They will not tolerate, gali galoch karo, chal jayega, no. I think this is a completely new and different generation which is not willing to be ill-treated one way or the other. If you're treating me well, I'm willing to go along with you. But if you don't treat me well, I'll go back and give you in the same coin. I remember we changed our training program. Earlier, a lot of the people, including our know-how partners, had given lectures as a part of our learning process. And that was causing long time for training, 3 months. And every month we trained people, it was costing us 7,000 to 8,000 rupees. So I said, no, we have to change this. I can't afford to put more 7,000, 8,000 rupees from a donor to train this person. So we shrunk it down to 2 months. The way we did it, we said, put everything that you want to say and show on videos. So these kids are there in residence, and they can watch the videos, group discuss, and next day start doing the practicals. If there's a problem, there's a person who can help them with how to do things. Because it's all more about practical work than so-called theory. I don't know why did I start saying that. Anyway, so we changed this. We changed this, and suddenly it started group discussions, and they started arguing with each other, and the whole pedagogy changed. And when we placed the first batch out of this, in hotels, and then we went for feedback. What do you think of this new batch? The earlier batch was more lecture-oriented, this, that, and the other. So the hotel people started saying, they are much better now at work. But, so what was the but? The but was that the earlier batch was much more obedient. And this batch is not obedient. They don't listen, they argue. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? For industrial discipline, that's not a good thing. But on the other hand, as an individual, if that person has grown, then the industry is not ready to do some of these things. I think the big point is that there are realities inside how the young people are changing, how the system is changing, how they see opportunities. They're not waiting for you to give them opportunities. They're finding opportunities as well. And in that then, where do you structure this whole vocational training program? If you create institutions today which are fashioned after the institutions of yesterday, even if you change the courses, they may not work. I don't think they will work. We have to find a different, more nimble way of training people or giving them training so that they can train themselves and move ahead in life. I'm not sure I know the answer of how to do it, but I'm going to show you one more example, and then I'm going to stop because I've spoken a lot already. So what is the point of all this? Where are we? Where is the problem? I was looking at census figures for some other reason, and I came across these numbers for Kerala. Again, untreated basic raw data from census. And what you see on the left side is simple plotting of, rural population, age-wise, total rural population of Kerala at all ages, all right? And what it says is 50% rural or 52% rural, 48% urban. And that's a steady population. It doesn't change. The profile of a village in terms of percent of rural population versus urban doesn't change. But look at the other one on the right. What that is percent male population in Kerala. All Kerala, rural and urban together. Now my hypothesis was Kerala is one place which exports people outside. There's no industry. So if that is the case, the likelihood that males will migrate is higher, and if it's happening in a big way, then the proportion of males in the population should drop. And this is what I see. What you see here is up to the age of 21, which is about here, yeah? It is flat. Looks like these kids are at home. They may be doing whatever. We know that up to the age of 16 in Kerala, they are in school. Whether they are learning well, Rukmini Banerjee will bring out ASR reports saying Kerala is not doing all that well. That's fine, but they are in school. They're learning something. They are protected. And then some more years, 2-3 years. And then after 21, like a magic wand, they start leaving Kerala. Whether they go to the Gulf states or other states of India, we don't know, but most likely Gulf states. And look at the proportion. You're dropping from rural males, males of the population being 53%, coming down to something like 46%, and keeps on dropping. And the story doesn't end there. They work, and then they start making their way back to their own home country. If that percentage is real. It has to be treated. I know you guys will say this is all rubbish, but I thought this was quite exciting. And if you then say, but Bihar does that too. And again, let me say that in Kerala, it's not that Kerala has huge vocational training institutions that are greatly successful. What is there is Kerala has these links in the Gulf country, right? There are employers waiting to employ young people. These people are transported to the Gulf countries. They are also they are hired initially as helpers, and they're trained on the job. And then they grow over there, and they stay, because there's no other opportunity here. They can be in construction work, they can be anywhere. And somebody was saying in Bihar, Biharis go to the Gulf countries as well. But they go as helpers and stay as helpers because they're not educated enough. The Malayalis boss over the Biharis even in Gulf, because the Malayalis have higher skills and higher education, and the Biharis are larger in number, but they can't grow to the supervisory level. So what happens in Bihar? I thought maybe this will work with Bihar as well, but unfortunately it doesn't. Because Bihar is a, well, as we all know, largely uneducated, illiterate society, and most people don't know their age. That is what this chart says, or don't know their age exactly. See this? Where is that? Okay, this scatter. Okay. What it's saying is, if you go back to Kerala, what you see is people seem to know their age. It's not scattered all over the place. You go to Bihar, you ask somebody, कि आपकी उम्र क्या है? लिख दो 45 होगी. And it is interesting that it's the 30s and the 35 and the 40 and the 45 are all up here. Because a large number of people are saying this. They don't know their exact age. So an estimate, 40-45 लिख दो कुछ ऐसा. And we've seen this in Asar as well. You can see that the even numbers are higher than odd numbers. It seems like if you know your age, even if it's odd, you will say exactly it is 39 or 27. But otherwise, you'll say, लिख दो 26-28 कुछ होगा. So that seems to be very interesting. But anyway, so because of this scatter, you can't tell. If you guys want to do some research on where Bihar ends up from villages, maybe we should do a census like Rukmini did, and for a few villages, and say, where does these Biharis go? Maybe you'll find some in West Indies, who knows? But this is something that is happening in India, and these guys get their preliminary training in their village. And this is not only true of Bihar, it's true of Odisha also. There is just a piece of Odisha that supplies plumbers to all India. And the way it happens is the Shagirdi happens in village, and when they are placed, they go to another Odia person and trains. We are not using these very simple, natural processes of skilling. They are not the highest skilled people, perhaps, to start with, but that's how they grow. The other problem is, once you have started working, you are not given formal skilling, neither are you certified. So I start as a plumber, and I'm known as a plumber. Right? I come to your house, and you say, "Kitna loge?" I bargain with you, and you decide whether I'm a good enough plumber or not by calling Anup Mukherjee and say, he says he's worked for you, is he a good guy? He says, yeah, he's a good guy. Then you don't mind giving him 100 rupees more. This is an informal certification that happens through verification in networks. But nobody says that this plumber is grade C level or grade B level or grade A level. There is no certification, not in the informal sector and not even in the formal sector. In formal sector as well, whether you are better or not is determined only by whether you skip jobs and go to somebody else and get another job that's high paying. In other words, we have reached a point where we've actually, I think we're jumping up saying there is demographic dividend to be reaped. We need to train 400 million people, but the reality is that these people will be finding their own work and they don't have time to come to you for 3 months, leave alone 2 years. They don't have the money, the opportunity cost is not there, and the industry beckons. In Vapi area, Dadra Nagar Haveli, that area, you will find that the younger kids, 15, 16, 14-year-olds are sucked up by the companies there. You may talk about child labor, but the opportunity is there and the industry says, "Bacha hai to aa jao, kaam chalu karo," and money is given. All this happens because there is opportunity. So we've started very late. Liberalization took a long time. If we had started many of these things pre-1991, even pre-1995, maybe we would have had the opportunity to do it, but we know. And that's why Kerala is important. Kerala has universalized elementary education for a long time. Whether their learning levels are the best and not, we'll leave that alone. But that benefit of universal primary, elementary, secondary education, Kerala is reaping today. Maybe Bihar will reach that. Because in the skilling sector, employers say this all the time, and I believe it. It's not about whether you can wait tables, because you're not going to wait tables for the lifetime. That etiquette and how to handle trays and all that's one thing. Or even being a plumber for that matter. Do you have transferable skills? Have you learned how to go out there and look for jobs? Can you retrain yourself? All those skills are just not there. Have I learned to learn? This is not there. I think even if it's late, I think the bigger challenge is to start at the school level. So then somebody gets up and says, start vocational training in schools. Then who? The middle classes will not send their kids to vocational training because they always aspire for their children to be engineers. It's not about vocational training in schools. It's about doing things with your hands. Our country has been saying that what you do with the brain is good. What you do with hands, we don't respect. We don't respect at all. We don't respect skills. So how do you integrate working with your hands in the curriculum is more important than saying vocational training. So these are some of my thoughts. I've spoken for 40 minutes, as you said. Let me stop here. I'm sure there are lots of stray thoughts in what I said today. Thank you. I don't have a message.
No, but I mean, is it possible that if the kind of skills that the industry needs, there is no institution accredited or otherwise that would impart those skills, and that's why the industry is putting no value on it, right? I mean, they are. Thank you. I mean, what your stories seem to suggest is that the industry prefers to get raw labor, train them themselves, pay them very low, and move on with it, rather than having some people trained by your institution or any other institution.
Let's take an example. When Infosys or Wipro hire, what they do is they go to engineering colleges and interview people, or they ask people to apply. They hire them, they put them through a long period of training and then select who's really going to be an Infosys employee. They are not satisfied with the engineering graduates and what they know of programming or whatever it is that they want. So they are doing that. And that is at a level where a student has gone through engineering. Okay? You may find, I went to a factory in south of Kolhapur, and that guy is a supplier for aerospace industry. He said, I do precision work and I need 15 people and they must be skilled, and all I do is go to ITIs and try to get those people who can understand how to handle this, can do basic calculations or at least reasonable calculations, and then I'm willing to train them. But he says, when I go to the ITIs, I don't find people who can actually understand what I'm trying to say. So they are willing to do that at a higher level. At a lower level, what happens is, today I need somebody, I hire them. It doesn't have to be fully trained. And as long as he's going to be working on the shop floor, somebody else is going to help, and they're learning on the job. That's how it is happening. I'm not saying that if they are certified, the industry will not hire. Our experience also shows, once we've established credibility, businesses and industry do hire our graduates on a regular basis. They're willing to. But are they willing to pay the premium for the trainee who is better trained? That is not happening on a large scale. If that was going to happen, even with certification, that would happen. But I think you wrote an article, I don't remember who did, in the unorganized sector, the industry is more concerned about that percent margin of profit that they're playing with, and so paying a premium on skills may not be good for them. And the big guys, the auto industry is squeezing the little guy who's a supplier, and he is squeezing the other guy who's the further supply chain. And so whether they can afford to pay the aspirational wages for these young people is the big key question. And that is where there seems to be a friction. It's not about assured minimum wages or otherwise, because anyway there's no unions. And even if there was a union, you don't know that there would be actually an agreement on some of these things. So I think there are a lot of frictions which have to be understood. It's not about simply labor laws being changed. There are some real economic truths. If it was a big factory like in the old days, you could talk about those things. But this is so scattered. So yes, it is possible to create certification. But whether if I create an institution that is accredited and therefore, then people will come. I'll give you an example. I met another person recently whose father had started a training institute in electronics in 1934, influenced by Gandhiji. Electronics in 1934, mind you, in Mumbai. And they were one of the best electronics training institutions, and their people were being hired everywhere. They had branches. Now he's saying, I want to donate my equipment to you. Can you take it? Because nobody comes to me anymore. I said, why? This is a 2-year course accredited by AICTE. Costs 50,000 rupees per annum. I said, why? Why do you charge 50,000? Because the AICTE has told me how much to pay. The faculty. And I have to pay that. And they go according to those salaries, and whether the students are there or not, I must pay them. So the whole thing again gets into a situation where the economics starts challenging it. So this is the moment you get into accreditation and government institutions and all that, it starts creating trouble. That is why we found a way out, saying that I don't want to get into this business of accreditation and then government telling me how much I should pay, if the government is going to pay and so on. No. I have a very simple idea. My institution and a knowledge provider certification, I'm not telling the student, pay me 30,000 and take, no, this is a free training anyway. Take it or leave it. And then if you get the job, that is my credibility, and then people come. So it is possible. The question is, will it solve the bigger problem? I think the bigger problem is that people are finding their jobs whichever way, because we have a contracting system, because it's an informal sector, there's a whole informal economy. So how can you formalize training structures for a 93% informal workforce? That seems to be the problem, according to me.
Okay. I mean, when you pose this first question, will growth stall if you don't have skills? And I said no, because I thought what you're suggesting was, at least in manufacturing, it is still skill-biased technical change, just like in developed countries, and there's not that much flexibility in technology. And so what the industry wants is robots and engineers who run robots, and they don't really have much use for kind of these the intermediate skills that you get in ITI, right?
Yeah.
But that's manufacturing. But in terms of services, hospitality, health, education, right? You would think these intermediate skills would be useful. And so I'm kind of surprised that they're not putting any premium on it.
No, some of them are willing to put the premium, but there's a conflict. For example, GE is selling what is it called? Diagnostic equipment to hospitals left, right, and center. And they sense a big market. But they know that there are not enough technologists there. or whatever they call it, technicians. So to handle all these radiology equipment, this, that, and the other. And they're coming out with a lot of products. And they said, can you help us mobilize people to be trained to do this? We want to give them 6-month training. At the end of 6 months, they can get a job in a hospital where we are selling our products. They said, fine. They said, but we want them all to be BSc graduates. I said, that's not the sector I work with. And why do you need BSc people? And what's the big deal? I was a BSc once upon a time. So what's so different about the BSc guy that is not, that the 12th grade can't do in 6 months' time? They were not willing to change there. They said, no, we need BSc because that's our condition. I said, why should a BSc guy come to you to become a technician? Because he's looking at something else he probably wants to do. So I think there are problems of the perception of the big industry, of what they want and what they think can happen, versus what is likely to happen. There are problems with it. Sir.
Problem is almost a chicken and egg question. Until unless there is a job, there will not be any commensurate effort for skilling. Now, I tell you my own experience that RG was given one Jan Shikshan Sansthan about 10-15 years ago. And when it was given to us, we were told that you should replicate what has happened in Coimbatore, what has happened in Bombay, what has happened in Delhi. So you can do great things in Patna as well. So I told the director to move around, and I said that you also visit those Jan Shikshan Sansthan which are located in the backward areas, in the Hindi heartland, in other places. Now in Coimbatore, in Bombay, in Delhi, exactly they had this model that they had MU with Hero Honda or with Maruti or with big corporate organizations. And there was a long queue for the persons who got trained from those Jan Shikshan Sansthan. But that was in contrast to those institutions which were located in the Hindi heartland.
Who were?
Those institutions which were located in the Hindi heartland. For example, in Bhopal or say in Patna, Jamshedpur was a successful instance. Now, my contention is, until unless, especially after the liberalization, when economy stagnated in some way, some sort of a calculation was working, so that became a major problem. But what you have said essentially, that should be replicated. That, for example, you gave the example of Bihar and Kerala. Kerala, the fundamental strategy was investment in education, and it had a long history of social movement, right from Coimbatore down to present communist and other government. So, because of their fundamental investment in education, possibly relatively better quality also, their growth rate is also one of the highest, I think, in Kerala in the country. So that is the main strategy. Skilling is not the strategy. That cannot be the main strategy. Main strategy will be for investment in the primary sector or in primary education or in secondary education, which is practically absent in the Hindi heartland, and especially in Bihar, now it is picking up. But in the long run, one has to make an effort in that direction. So my submission is that we should not worry about the skilling. Skilling will not take you anywhere, because the model that you are suggesting, that can be Bombay specific model. That cannot be Patna specific model. Suppose I want to train people, where will I place? So I just wanted to mention, because already you have been doing great work in Asar and Pratham, but the present model that you are suggesting, I don't think it is a workable model other than in some of the most developed areas.
No, let me correct your impression. We run 70 training centers around the country, including in Assam, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. So we have gone, the model though is mobilize people from the rural areas, not urban, and place them in jobs where they are available. And the problem with that is, of course, that the jobs are available in urban areas or the areas that are upcoming urban areas. And so if the student or the trainee is not willing to migrate, then there's a problem. Now let me add something that I neglected to say, is we find a big success rate from tribal areas. You see, the UP, Bihar, Kerala, Tamil Nadu all have links to the traditional employment centers. Meaning you have your uncle who has stayed there or staying there, or some gaonwala is known. These are traditional links. But if you go to Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand is improving now about the links, but Chhattisgarh, a lot of the Naxal affected areas, that's where we work as well. And there, the young kids do not have connections with the city. They've not even seen the big cities. So when they are trained, they are the first in their region who are migrating, and they are willing to put in a lot of hard work, and they stay on the job and they work very well. So that also is true. Sorry? So wherever the jobs are, and unfortunately the jobs are only coming up in Western India and in urban centers. So this is a problem. But if we are going to skill people, we must place them on jobs. Otherwise, there could be a completely different model which is independent of jobs. But the government of India, when we started doing this 8, 10 years ago, started with the premise that I'll give you funds, and we don't take government of India funds all the time. State, sometimes we do. If you are going to take my funds, if you are going to train a person, there are two conditions. One is either you place them on a job, which is one kind of a scheme. The other is the Sector Skill Council certifies that this person is trained. So placement, job placement was an important part of the early skilling initiative. And if there are no jobs around there, then where do you place them? And that was one of the failures of the vocational skilling scheme, because you can't place them. Then you fudge numbers. I've placed these people in so many places and all that. We didn't want to get into that. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. You can ask me later.
The story that you say actually is at one part very convincing, other part is not convincing, in the sense that I think the way we look at the informal sector is as if it's an aberration. I think this is the basic central growth strategy in the country today. The kind of informalization that you see, and there is an assumption that we make that because it's an industrial sector, they will look for efficiency, labor efficiency. According to me, there is no such assumption, is not justified. I mean, what they look for is labor flexibility, they look for this kind of contractualization to keep the costs low, and more importantly, that docileness, that docility that you talked about, you know, these are more important than the so-called efficiency, because that is the kind of employment that we are seeing through contractors, through things like that. So if you can provide them skilled people, better skilled than others, they will take it, but not at any premium at all. And that very much fits the whole accumulation. This is the central accumulation strategy. Now the point that I'm, actually joining this with the question he asked, that as a strategy, now Pratham can do a few institutions like that, 70 in the country. If we are to actually replicate this strategy by other private organizations or whatever, you'll immediately see the futility of this, but because so many trained people will not be absorbed, or they will be absorbed at exactly the rate which is the going rate of whatever. Okay? So even the kind of thing which you are being able to do, that some people are being taken even at the same rate, but actually they are being preferred, will fail if this becomes a mass strategy, because this assumption that industry will take necessarily skilled people, I don't think is true given the current employment mode, and that is the central thing I feel that, this is the accumulation strategy. Informal sector is not at all an aberration. This is the centralized, what I'm saying, the central growth strategy in the country. And, if to come back to the morning's discussion, this whole thing about the need-based economy, it is not entirely a need-based economy. This is also as much a reserve army of labor as much, they complement each other, the need-based part and the reserve army of labor.
No, I agree with you that our model is, the model that I described is entirely based on where the jobs and the job placement. when we started finding out in some sectors this is not possible, we started looking at what we can do. For example, in the automotive sector, I told you, payments are low. They are being hired in ones and twos by dealers who may or may not keep them complete insecurity and so on. So we've started looking at the possibility of creating groups of these young trained people and giving them capital to start their own garages. We were inspired by something that the young women started doing by way of creating their own beauty salons and paying back the money. So we are now experimenting with whether these young automotive trained people can become mechanics, general purpose mechanics, not only automotive, but because there is agricultural implements and all kinds of things going on, whether they can do that. Yeah, but in the end, if you're looking at 25 million people looking for jobs, let's say half of them will still continue to be on agriculture, but if they want to be, and agriculture will not bear all the young people, the way the population has grown, then the ultimate answer is whether there are going to be rural jobs and how is the rural economy going to grow. And for that, vocational trainers have no answer. Up to a point we can say we will train and place them in jobs, but this is fundamentally not the job of a vocational trainer. We are doing it now to establish a certain model. But eventually, actually the industry should say, you are training people, I'll take them. That should be the ideal model. But right now, we are going from pillar to post saying, hamare graduate ko engage karo. So I agree with you. This is how the model started, but that's not where it's going to end. Hopefully we'll change. No. You have a question? Okay. No. Go ahead. Wait. You shall be heard.
I was struck by what you said about the informal economy of skilling itself, skilling and identifying jobs, right? Which is built on sets of connections and familial networks and so on and so forth. The question is, so at some level, is this leading us into a low equilibrium scenario? And
low equilibrium?
In terms of the quality of skilling and the kind of access to jobs that you will have through this network. I don't know. And if that were the case, then from how does one leverage this network to make it more effective? And, because as you say, ultimately, whatever the government may do or not do, people will find jobs because this is the mechanism that they've been using all the time.
I think it's all got to do with the premium on training and certification. Let's say all these plumbers who are trained in Odisha end up in various cities. And we keep open a kiosk. Now these days, once upon a time going for a PUC was a headache. But now you see these PUC vans parked all over the place. You go and the guy tells you whether your car is okay or not. Let's say I have a kiosk which says you come and you'll be tested and you'll be certified whether you are a plumber grade A or B or C. I certify you and then you start getting a premium. Then the fact that you can be trained, or then I offer him that if you are a grade A plumber, this is what's going to happen. I don't think the workers really know that there's a premium at the end of it, that I should be trained. I'm getting a job, I'm getting money today. Is the industry going to do the same? That is the question. So in that sense, it is not there. So the informal economy is there. What you can do, where is the intervention? I am suggesting maybe the intervention need not be at the beginning stage where we are doing. It should be somewhere in the middle. After the person has stayed in the job for a half a year, say, would you like to get more training? Is that where the industry will say, okay, jao hum aapko stipend dete. So 3 mahine ki tankha aapko dete, aap jaake seekh ke aao. Is the industry willing to do that? Now that is where they will be able to invest. Now those models are not worked out. We are all looking at pre-service training model. And at the end of it, that guy doesn't know whether he really wants to be an auto mechanic or a plumber. Sir.
I have something to say. Are you saying that like in Kerala, the students were being trained in schools up to a point, and therefore they looked after themselves. And is that what we should do? I just want to tell you something. See, Joe Stiglitz was here, I think last year, and I was asked to speak about his work and stuff. So I read up on his, I had not read his biography, many tidbits, but one thing that I found out was the school he went to, and apparently this is required in all schools when he was a student, but they would have to be trained in 2 trades. And Stiglitz learned to be an electrician, so much so that he now told me that if I wanted my house wired from scratch, he could do it. So, you see, I mean, what I'm getting at is that's part of this Kerala thing. That is, you pick up. See, one thing which has been wrong with our vocational training is that the word vocational has been taken to be a dirty word. So if you do vocational training, it means that you're not really good for anything else. Whereas if you picked it up along with your school curriculum,
Absolutely.
you could have done something which is with it.
Yeah, but it should not be, oh, those kids are vocational training
Yeah,
kids.
yeah,
That
precisely.
should not be. You tell
No,
every
but
kid in 6th grade, 5th grade, you should be able to nail down a nail with a hammer. Doesn't matter if your fingers get hurt a little bit here and there. No, go fix a wire, go understand. The handyman skills are easy for anybody to pick up, but we don't integrate that into. This is actually better pedagogically also, I'm pretty sure.
No, but you see, I mean, we also make the distinction, but about, you know, people going to online courses or correspondence courses, or we always tend to look down upon them. And I think in some sense that has been bad, because I think there are good people in there.
No, but they'll have the last laugh because all these online course people are finding jobs.
Yes.
Especially when they are in programming
Absolutely.
or marketing, who knows. So, the way economy, how do people hire these days? It would be a good survey to do with employers. Do they look at the certificate? Do they take university certificate seriously, or they look for something else? Exactly. Yeah.
When he found out that I had issued a certificate saying that this student is good enough to do a PhD somewhere in the US, and had been admitted, although the fellow had not yet passed his MA. Now, he said, who gave you the authority? I said, I thought the guy was good, that's why I wrote, and they took it. So,
Yeah.
he said, then what will we do with the JNU degree? I said, let's stop it. I mean, basically.
A lot of this institutional training is redundant. And as keep saying, a lot of it is employment guarantee scheme. Unfortunately true.
Just one last thing. I mean, the one hypothesis, I'm still very intrigued, you know, that the industry does not really put any premium on skills. So is it possible that the general education that the kids are getting in the public schools is so bad that the cost required to actually impart training to the point that the industry actually values it is so high that the kids can't afford it?
Okay, let's divide up the 100% kids who are going into first standard. Okay, now most of these guys will go to 10. Let's say in the next 2-3 years, they will not stop at 8th anymore. As Rukmini gave you numbers, 4 lakhs, 10th standard appeared in 2005 and now 15 lakhs. So everybody is going to go to 10. The aspiration is 10वीं pass to hona chahiye. Okay. So the government will declare universal education till 10th standard. Okay. After that, if everybody starts going to 11th, that will be good for education business. But how long will they survive? There is an economic compulsion. There's a percentage of people, 30, 40, 50%, will start looking for jobs as soon as they're 16, 17, 18. When these kids go, they will get only entry-level positions and semi-skilled or even unskilled work. That's what they're going to get. Treat them separately. As you go higher, another half of whatever there is will not go beyond 12th standard. About at that time, 70% of the kids who entered the education stream are not going to go beyond that. These kids, what are they going to do? They don't have the skills and they feel, abhi main 12th standard pass hu, mujhe achhi naukri chahiye. That is where the clash is. There's a lot of problems with that. Itna tum padhaya kyun aapne humko? I think people are, this is a slightly dilute version of your, what was that? Occupy Wall Street. Why are you charging me so much money and giving me degrees that don't give me a job? I think we are heading towards that kind of a student unrest that we saw in the 70s. I am hoping that there will be that student unrest. People have to come, start shouting, what are you doing? You're wasting our time and then telling us I'm no good. What did you do for all these years? Somebody has to start saying that.
Thank you very much, Madhav, and thank you guys for your patience. It's 7 o'clock, so we better end it today. Thank you.